Thank you for joining me today. My name is Pamela Fountain, and I am an art educator with the Newport Library Art Center. Today, we're going to be learning to do French knots to make dots and eyes. This is the fourth part of the series on cross-stitching. So if you have not watched the first three, please do so now, as I will refer to things discussed in those videos. Part 1 also explains the materials needed and where you can find them. French knots can be very useful in doing cross-stitch. You may also find that you can use them in other sewing projects. I use them often when making felt penny rows. So here's some examples in cross-stitch. These little eyes are French knots. And in this penny rug, these little centers of these little starbursts are also French knots. Okay, so you can use them in lots of different ways. Making French knots can require some practice. The tension on the threads and the position of your hands is very important. Don't get discouraged. If you are struggling with French knots and want to finish a project, you can always replace it with a back stitch or a basic cross stitch, and I'll show you how to do that. For this video, you will need the following things. You'll need some needle, some floss. This is about 12 to 14 inches of floss, and you want 2 strands for what we're doing. You'll want some Aida cloth, and I would suggest 14 count, a hoop, and of course you might need some scissors. Right? So the first thing that we're going to do is, because Aida cloth, and we're going to be using those holes in the cloth, you're going to want a fairly good knot at the end of your thread. So I would do a slip knot, which I use a lot. And what I do is I kind of get my fingers a little bit wet, roll the floss like that, roll it off my finger, grab all of that, and pull it. And that makes a pretty good size knot for doing this project, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to put your needle up through one of these holes like that. And you want to pull it so that the back of the back has your knot is right taut to the fabric, okay? And then you want to set it down, pull it over. Now I'm left-handed, so I pull it this way, but if you go the other way, that's fine. Pull it over, and then you're going to wrap the thread around your needle. I'm going to do 3 times, and then you want to kind of pull it together like that. Now I want to pull this so that I want to put my needle back, not exactly down in the same hole, but there's little threads, maybe a thread or 2 above like that. So I stick that in like that. And then trying to hold this fairly tight, but not super tight, I'm going to pull my needle right through. So I'm going to hold that and then pull my needle through. And there's my French knot. So I'll try that one more time. Put your needle in. Set it down. Wrap it around 3 times. Put it back in, maybe just a thread above. Hold it. And there's your knot. Okay? So that would be like 2 eyes. Now you can change the size of your knots by the number of times that you wrap it. I wouldn't go many more than 4 times because then it can be a problem trying to pull it all through. You can also use more threads. We use 2 threads on this. You could use 4, and that will make your knot a little bigger. So depending on how big you want your French knot, you can simply change the number of threads or the number of times that you wrap it. All right. So I'm just going to clip this off and show you how you would do French knots on a pattern. So here's this pattern of this apple that we've been using. And so I'm simply going to put another slip knot in here, like that. catch it and pull it down so I have a good knot in the end. Now I want my eye to be over 2 and down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I'm going to want the hole that's in the bottom left. So I'll go over to my material. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And I'm going to want that hole right there. So I'm going to bring my thread up, right up here, like that. Put it down, wrap it 1, 2, 3 times, put it back, but not exactly in the hole, just a little bit above it. And pull it through like that. Okay. Now, I probably am going to want to just take a couple of stitches back here. So I'm just going to put my thread in, and that way, if I make another French knot and I don't like it, then I still can keep this one. So I'm just going to catch it a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to go over and do the same thing on the other side. So I can actually cut that off like that. Right? So I'm going to thread it. Right? Over 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but this time I want to go in this side according to my pattern. Right there. Wrap it around 3 times. Go back just a little above. Pull. And there's his eyes. And again, I'll catch that on the back side. Just like that. So that way they'll hold them in place. Okay. So, whoops, what happened there? So there are the eyes. Okay, now I told you earlier in the video that if you find French knots are just really frustrating and you're just not going to be able to finish, that you could, instead of a French knot, just put a basic cross stitch in, or you could just do a back stitch. So go ahead and practice French knots, and please be sure to join us for the final video in this series, Setting Up Your Cross Stitch Project, where you will learn how to determine the size of your project, cutting your material, and projects you can do with cross stitch. Until then, happy stitching!